Hey guys, Meteorologist Chris Tomer here on this Monday. Lots of good news in the last 24 hours. Look at this. It is a powder day up there. Aspen snowmass, this is actually snowmass, reporting a solid foot of snow in just the last 24 hours. And again, this is just like the first of three cold fronts in the forecast. And what it's going to do is we're going to set up this beautiful northwest flow. And I've got some deep bullseyes of snow in my forecast. I mean, guys, what this is we're really seeing a sea change and a nice shift in the forecast. Finally, after weeks and weeks of warm temps and delayed openings, we're finally getting into a really good pattern. Here's Steamboat this morning reporting 6 inches. Look at that, how beautiful that is up there with that sun kind of poking through the back there and some of that new snow. Steamboat's going to be one of my bullseyes, actually, in the extended forecast. I think we could see 15 to 20 inches over the next 7 days. Look at that on top of the Thunderhead camera right there. I mean, this is what Steamboat needed. And the resort sits a little bit lower than a lot of resorts, and so it took a little while longer to get this, but now we're finally in this pattern, I think, with much colder air, and we're going to settle into this northwest flow. This is the Arapahoe Basin, another spectacular shot here. They're reporting a few inches of new snow. Look at some of the valley fog out here. You're looking out towards Summit County, and Breck is in the distance. Keystone is just down the valley, but this is a southwest aspect, and so it's going to take a little while longer to build that snowpack up at base, but we're eventually getting there. Here's Alta. So the storm total over the last 24 hours is 9 inches. That's about right where I thought we'd be out of this first wave. And again, I've got additional waves in the forecast that will come across the Wasatch. And the temperatures, also very important, I wanted to point out, it's 7 and 9. 7 up at mid-mountain, about 9,600, and down at the base, it's about 9 degrees. So we needed to bring those temps down, and we are seeing that. Here's radar. This is all that is left of our departing cold front, the one that laid down the snow in the Wasatch, the one that snowed here in Colorado with that foot out here into parts of Pitkin County. So now we move on, and let's take a look at what is next. Here's this is water vapor satellite imagery, so the big view. Okay, so we've established this northwest flow pattern. It's like a big slide in the atmosphere. So everything that comes up over the top takes it, rounds the corner, and then comes down that northwest flow. So you get these fronts that just kind of ride that. And guys, that's exactly what we're going to see. This is a really good pattern. Just texted a couple of friends of mine. I've got friend Keegan up in Jackson Hole, and I said, you've got a great storm cycle coming. What did I say exactly to him? I said, the 5th through the 7th up there in the Tetons. Look out. So, and that fits with my bullet points this morning. The northwest flow is going to dominate. I've got bullseyes for parts of Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and also in the central and northern mountains of Colorado. Next cold front, 12-2, 12-3. Another one, a little smaller, but it's anchored to the northwest flow, 12-4, 12-5. And then another one, 12-5, 6, and 7. You can see how that corresponds to the best odds of accumulating snow. So for example, the next one hits Colorado on the afternoon, evening of 12-2, light to moderate snow accumulations, light to moderate 12-3, light to moderate accumulations 12-5, moderate to heavy 12-6, and light on 12-7. So that is almost every single day over the next 7 days that we have a chance for accumulating snow in Colorado. Almost. Utah, 12-2, light to moderate. That should say 12-4. Afternoon, evening of 12-4 into 12-5, moderate for the Wasatch, and then light to moderate 12-6. Idaho's also in it. Look at this stretch. Afternoon, evening 12-4 all the way through 12-7, heavy accumulations. Wyoming, light to moderate 12-2, and then there it is. Late 12-4, 12-5, 12-6, 12-7. It's probably going to be quite heavy. And even parts of Montana will benefit from that flow. Let me show you the forecast radar. So this is we'll start this out at lunchtime today, Monday. And by the way, welcome to December 1st. So here comes the next cold front. Again, everything's going to kind of come down through this direction, that northwest flow. Let me move this ahead. So there's lunch, there's dinner. Look what happens. It's already moving in to the Tetons. Gotta love it. Big sky, Bridger Bowl. I think we could see some significant snow around the Snow Bowl up there outside of Missoula. And eventually we're going to pile up the snow in central to northern Idaho as well. But look at this. So if you just kept your eye on the Tetons, I mean, it just keeps overrunning, and that's a nice lifting wind over the top of the Tetons. So, all right, here we are, 5 a.m. on Tuesday, still snowing in all those same locations. There's the lunch hour, dinner hour. Now look what happens by the dinner hour. Starting to see snow over the top of the Wasatch in the mountains of Colorado. All right, here we are. Oh, look at that. So you're looking at, there's 5 a.m. on Wednesday, December 3rd. Widespread snow across Colorado, departing Utah. But look at this, we could see snow over the top of Denver. So late Tuesday into the morning hours on Wednesday, looks like accumulating snow for the Denver area and the foothills, and certainly up over the top of the Continental Divide with that northwest wind flow. So I like what I'm seeing here. There's the lunch hour. It departs through southern Colorado. Here's 5 a.m. on Thursday, December 4th, and there comes the next wave. So it's one after another. I want to show you the time height forecast. I looked at this yesterday for snow mass. Let's do it again for snow mass because I like what I see. So there's our departing wave. You're looking at a cross section through all of the vertical atmosphere all the way up to the jet stream on this. And where I see the green, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the green, and that's going to be your moisture, your higher humidity. And then you've got the next storm system right here, afternoon of the 2nd through the 3rd, maybe even into early on the 4th. And there's a lot of green right there. High humidity, and look at the surface, this isentropic surface lifting up that moisture conveyor belt, moving that moisture in. And you can see some of these wind barbs out of the west-northwest. So that's a pretty good chunk of moisture. So we'll have the next accumulating snow for the snow mass area, the West Elks, Steamboat, the Flat Tops, Vail, Copper, Summit County, Loveland, A-Basin, Keystone, Winter Park comes in afternoon of the 2nd through the 3rd. All right, the atmospheric pressure anomalies. We'll start this out on 12/3. So there's our front. There's your northwest flow. There's an area of low pressure. So it's active. And here we go on the 6th. Look at this. See the ripples here in this atmospheric anomaly surface? That's your northwest flow. So you've got all these ripples of energy riding that flow, bumping in to the geography, bumping into the mountain ranges, and we are just lifting that up and squeezing out snowfall. And then you have a big drop in pressures out here across a lot of the east, the Midwest. By 12/9, that has shifted out, and now we've got higher than normal pressures across the west with all the dropping pressures out here across a lot of the east and the northeast. So the pattern would be over for the west at that point. It would be much more calm. Okay, here's the total precip as if everything fell as rain. This is through the close of business on the 7th. And it is very obvious. There's your northwest flow. So all of these ripples, these cold fronts, will just ride that and bump into these mountain ranges, and we're going to enhance the snowfall. Now, the key break point, again, for me is about 1 inch. That's where you start to see the yellow, and that's at least a foot of snow. And in many cases, when you have this type of flow with the cold air in place, the ratios are 13, 14, 15 to 1, maybe even higher. So the bullseyes, boom. Tetons, Wind Rivers, Yellowstone, Montana, central and northern Idaho, and central and northern Colorado. Those certainly up here into the Pacific Northwest as well, but that's where we're seeing it. Let's roll down. Same product, just different vantage points. Southwestern perspective. You can see some of the yellows emerging there in the data. That's at least a foot of snow. in a lot of those areas over the next 7 days. Here's snow. This is a simple 10 to 1. So deep purple is at least 6 inches. Your bright pink is going to be at least a foot. And where you see the white, that's 2 feet. I can see both. I can see some whites emerging in those bullseye areas, and I can see a lot of bright pinks. So you're looking at least a foot, and in some cases 2 feet. Just at a very simple ratio at this point on those bullseye peaks. Okay, here's your southwestern vantage point. And again, you've got heavy precip, heavy snow accumulation up there, western Colorado, central and northern mountains where you get that northwest flow. Here's my official forecast. Through the close of business on 12/7 grand totals, I've got 7 to 14 over the top of the Wasatch. And those numbers could trend up, certainly. I've got a solid 2 feet here over Grand Targhee and Jackson Hole, and that's probably a minimum. If I'm being perfectly honest, with what I'm seeing, I think that's probably a minimum. And then you've got at least a foot up here. Snowbowl, Discovery, Big Sky, Bridger Bowl, in fact 12 to 15 in a lot of those areas. And then I've got 20 up here around Brundage in central Idaho. We'll zoom into Colorado in a second. Nothing out here for the West Coast. And some pretty hefty numbers. These numbers have gone up in the last couple of days. Now looking at potentially 10 to 20 inches up there in the Pacific Northwest. And 6 to 12 up here through a lot of interior BC and Whistler. Let's zoom in. Here's Colorado. So big numbers. Look at Steamboat at 20, where that northwest flow just continues to hammer that area through the 7th. And at least a foot up here. Summit County, Keystone, A Basin, Winter Park, Loveland, Cameron Pass. Those numbers could trend up as well, depending on the exact angle of the flow coming in. But I've got 15s. Looks like a little bit of a bullseye here. Copper Vale, 12 to 14 Snowmass, Aspen, Crested Butte, and then a little bit less as you go into Summit or southern Colorado, northern New Mexico, 6 to 8 inches in those spots. Looking at Utah again, 7 to 14 with the lower numbers up here off the I-80 corridor through Park City, Deer Valley. About a foot up in Big Cottonwood, and Little Cottonwood going 12 to 14. Through the close of business on 12/7. All right, let's check out the Northeast. Nice cold flow up here with, it looks like at least one coastal storm, maybe 2, and then you've got a little bit of lake effect as well off of Erie, Ontario, and Lake Michigan. The deep purple's at least 6. If you were to see a bright pink, that'd be a foot. I'm seeing a lot of 6s. Basically, I think 4 to 8 inches might cover a lot of this zone. Here's my forecast. So again, 4 to 8 inches. And potentially if we get a coastal low, we might push 8 at Wachusett and 6 to 8 over Mount Snow, Ragged, and then the numbers drop off a little bit as you go north. But a general 4 to 8 will likely do it for that zone. All right, guys, we're going to end on the big western map here. Again, it's really this northwest flow that will deliver the snow with multiple waves and cold fronts coming down this thing, and you can see the result. There's quite a few spots that go 1 to 2 feet. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in here. Always appreciate it. Take care on this first day of December. Have a good one.